My son reserved a table at a high-end restaurant for Mother's Day. I spent the whole day preparing myself, feeling beautiful for the first time in years. And then, in the late afternoon, his mother-in-law swept into my living room in a full evening gown. "Son-in-law, I'm ready for our special dinner," she announced with that polished smile I had always distrusted. He gave her a warm nod and then turned to me with a small, awkward shrug. "Mom, you didn't really think this was for you, did you?" I didn't argue. I didn't cry in front of them. But later that night, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. "Mom, my cards are all declined. I need $18,000 in cash right now. It's an emergency." After what I told him, he spiraled into pure panic. But let me take you back to the beginning, to how one Mother's Day became the day I finally stopped waiting and started living. If my story resonates with you, if you've ever felt overlooked or taken for granted, subscribe to the channel and stay with me. There are more stories like this, and you're not alone. It was Sunday afternoon, exactly 3:45 p.m., and I was standing in front of my bedroom mirror, putting the final touches on my makeup. The late spring sunlight filtered through the lace curtains, casting soft patterns on the carpet, warming my skin just enough to make me feel alive. I had chosen a deep emerald dress that I'd bought specifically for this occasion. Nothing flashy, just elegant, the kind of dress that made me feel like I still mattered. The fabric whispered against my legs as I moved, a gentle reminder that I had chosen this for myself, too. I fastened the gold locket my late husband had given me on our 30th anniversary, the one with our wedding photo inside. My fingers lingered on the cool metal, tracing the engraved date, a quiet ache blooming in my chest for the days when love felt effortless. My hands shook a little as I applied a soft rose lipstick, the shade I used to wear when life still felt full of possibility. The faint scent of the lipstick, roses and vanilla, took me back to younger years, to dates with Richard under streetlights, to the woman I was before loss and loneliness softened my edges. I paused, meeting my own eyes in the mirror, wondering if Patrick would notice how I had tried, how I had let myself hope again. For weeks I'd been looking forward to this. My son, Patrick, had called me personally, something he rarely did anymore, and told me he'd booked a table at La Perla, one of those upscale waterfront restaurants where reservations are made months in advance. "Mom, I want this Mother's Day to be special," he'd said, his voice warm over the phone, almost like the boy who used to run to me after school. "Just you and me, pick you up at 4. I believed him completely. After years of canceled plans, forgotten birthdays, and holidays spent alone, I let myself hope again, even as a small voice whispered caution, reminding me how often that hope had been dashed. I smoothed the dress one last time, the silk cool under my palms, slipped on the low-heeled shoes I'd bought to match, and carefully descended the stairs. The wood creaked familiarly under my feet, a sound that usually comforted me, but today only heightened my anticipation. My house was quiet, the kind of quiet that had become my companion since Richard passed 8 years ago. The distant hum of a neighbor's lawnmower, the occasional bird call outside, nothing more. At 67, my knees ached on the steps, a dull throb that I pushed aside, but that day the pain felt distant, drowned out by anticipation. I sat in the living room with my small black purse on my lap, watching the clock tick toward 4, my fingers absently tracing the purse's clasp, over and over. Cars passed outside, engines rumbling faintly, but none stopped. 4:05, 4:10. Patrick was often late. Traffic, work, something always came up. I told myself not to worry, shifting in my chair as the afternoon light shifted, casting longer shadows across the faded floral rug. A flicker of doubt crept in. Was I foolish for believing this time would be different? I pushed it down, focusing on the faint scent of my new perfume lingering in the air. At 4:25, I heard an engine slow and park in front of the house. My heart leapt, a rush of warmth spreading through me. I stood, straightened my dress, feeling the fabric settle perfectly, and walked to the door with a smile already forming, my pulse quickening like it hadn't in years. I opened it, and the smile froze. There was Patrick, in a sharp navy suit, looking handsome as ever, the fabric catching the golden hour light. His wife Brooke was standing beside him in a simple but chic cocktail dress, her perfume a sharp floral note wafting toward me. And stepping out of the back seat was Brooke's mother, Vivian, dressed like she was attending a gala. Her floor-length sapphire gown shimmered with delicate beading, catching every ray of sun like scattered stars. A diamond necklace caught the light, and she carried a silver clutch that probably cost more than my monthly pension. Her hair was swept up in an elaborate style, makeup flawless, not a strand out of place. I stood there in my emerald dress, feeling suddenly small and out of place, the cool evening breeze brushing my skin, raising goosebumps under the thin fabric. A wave of inadequacy washed over me. Had I overdone it, or not done enough? Vivian climbed the porch steps with that effortless grace she always had, her heels clicking sharply on the wood, looking me over with a polite but distant smile that didn't quite warm her eyes. "Patricia, darling, what a lovely dress," she said, her tones sweet but edged, like honey laced with lemon. "Perfect for a quiet evening at home." My stomach dropped, a cold knot forming as her words sank in. The porch light flickered on automatically as the sun dipped lower, casting us all in a harsh glow. I looked at Patrick for clarification, for anything, a reassuring glance, a word, but he was checking his phone, thumbs moving quickly, avoiding me entirely. Brooke offered a tight smile and adjusted her earrings, the small gesture speaking volumes of her discomfort. Vivian breezed past me into my living room as if she owned the place, her gown rustling softly, turning in the center to survey the space, my familiar furniture, the framed photos on the mantel, the worn but loved armchair by the window. She inhaled lightly, as if assessing the faint scent of lemon polish I'd used that morning. "Son-in-law," she called to Patrick with a bright laugh that echoed slightly in the quiet room. "I'm all ready for our dinner. We don't want to be late. The view at La Perla is best at sunset." Patrick pocketed his phone and finally met my eyes. That small, awkward shrug again, his shoulders rising just enough to dismiss everything. "Mom, you didn't really think this was for you, did you? The reservation is for 3. I thought I'd made that clear." Clear? Nothing had been clear. He'd said he was taking me out, that it would be special, that he'd pick you up at 4. There had been no mention of Vivian, no hint that his actual plan was to treat his mother-in-law. The words hung in the air, heavy, as the clock on the wall ticked loudly in the sudden silence. I stood frozen in the doorway, purse clutched in my hands, fingers digging into the leather until it hurt. A rush of heat flooded my cheeks, embarrassment, anger, deep sorrow all mixing together. Vivian let out a soft, sympathetic chuckle that grated against my nerves. "Oh, Patricia, don't look so surprised. Patrick and I have been planning this for weeks. He even helped me pick this gown, didn't you, dear?" Patrick nodded, a quick, almost proud motion. "We went to 4 boutiques before we found the right one." 4 boutiques? My son had spent hours shopping with his mother-in-law for a Mother's Day gown while I ironed my one nice dress alone, thinking it was for our evening together. The realization hit like a wave, cold and numbing. I felt my throat tighten, a lump forming as I fought back the sting in my eyes. Brooke touched my arm lightly, her fingers cool and brief. "It's just, Mom really wanted this, and Patrick thought it would be nice to make her feel special." Make her feel special? On Mother's Day? My day? The words echoed in my mind, a bitter twist. I wanted to ask why my wanting didn't count, why my hope was so easily dismissed, but the question stuck, unspoken. Patrick glanced at his watch, the face glinting. "Reservations at 5:30. Traffic on Sundays can be brutal. Mom, do you mind if I leave a couple of boxes in your garage? We're redecorating and need the space." He didn't wait for an answer, just headed to the car and started unloading, the thud of boxes hitting the driveway punctuating the moment. Vivian adjusted her necklace in the reflection of my hallway mirror, tilting her head slightly, admiring the sparkle. "You know, Patricia, you really should find some hobbies. It's not healthy to be so dependent on family time. The words stung like salt in an open wound. Dependent? As if wanting to see my only child on Mother's Day made me needy? I felt a tremor in my hands, a deep ache in my chest, not just for this moment, but for all the moments leading here, the slow erosion of my place in his life. They left as quickly as they'd arrived. Patrick offered Vivian his arm down the steps, his hand steady on her elbow, opened the car door for her like the perfect gentleman. Brooke slid into the front seat with a final, fleeting glance back. Guilt? Pity? The engine started with a low rumble and they drove away, leaving me standing in my doorway in my emerald dress, watching taillights disappear down the street as the evening chill settled in, seeping through the fabric. I closed the door quietly. No slamming, no shouting, just a soft click, and then the heavy silence rushed back in, thicker now, pressing against my ears. I took off my shoes, the cool floor shocking against my stockinged feet, climbed the stairs slowly, each step a small surrender. I sat on the edge of my bed, still wearing the dress, the fabric now feeling heavy, constricting. I didn't cry, not yet. I just sat there, staring at the fading light through the window, trying to understand how my son could look me in the eye and act like my disappointment was an unreasonable misunderstanding, how the excitement that had carried me all day could vanish so completely, leaving only this hollow echo. To really understand how we got here, you need to know what my life had become. I wake up every morning at 6:30, even though there's no one to cook breakfast for anymore. Old habits die hard. The internal clock Richard and I set decades ago still ticks relentlessly. I make coffee for one, the rich aroma filling the kitchen as it brews, a small comfort in the quiet. I sit at the big oak table that used to seat four, Richard, Patrick, his sister who passed young, and me. Now it's just me and the quiet. The wood cool under my elbows, sunlight slanting across the grain, highlighting scratches from years of family meals. I turn on the morning news for company, voices murmuring about weather and headlines, but I barely listen, lost in memories of laughter that once filled this space. By 9 o'clock, the house is already spotless because I cleaned it yesterday and the day before. I dust shelves no one touches, the cloth picking up faint traces of Richard's old books, fold laundry that's only mine, the fresh scent of detergent a fleeting pleasure. I water plants Richard started decades ago, their leaves brushing my fingers softly, a living connection to him. The days stretch long and empty, time feeling thick, like moving through water. Sometimes I drive to the grocery store just to have somewhere to go, the engines hum a brief escape. I linger in the aisles, reading labels slowly, buying things I don't need, ripe peaches whose scent reminds me of summer picnics, because going home to silence feels worse, the empty cart echoing my footsteps. The cashiers know me by name, their smiles kind but distant. "How are you today, Mrs. Harlan?" they ask, scanning my few items. "Fine," I always say, forcing brightness into my voice. What else can I say? That my son rarely calls unless he needs something? That holidays are just another day now, marked only by the calendar's red letter? When Patrick does call, it's usually quick, his voice clipped with distraction. "Mom, can you watch the cat this weekend? Mom, do you have Dad's old tools? I need to borrow them. Mom, could you transfer a little money just until payday?" And I always said yes. Always. Because it was the only time he needed me. The only time I felt like I still mattered in his life, even if it was just as a convenience. My heart would lift at his name on the screen, only to settle back into quiet resignation afterward. I raised him mostly alone after Richard's heart attack left him bedridden for years. I worked nights as a bookkeeper to keep us afloat. The office lights, harsh and fluorescent, came home exhausted to cook simple meals, clean, help with homework under the warm kitchen lamp, sit by Richard's bedside holding his hand as machines beeped softly. When Richard died, Patrick was 21, just starting his career. I promised him he'd never want for anything, whispering it at the funeral as rain pattered on umbrellas. I took extra shifts, skipped vacations, put every extra dollar toward helping him get established. My own dreams quietly folded away. He did well. Good job in finance, married Brooke, bought a beautiful house in the suburbs with manicured lawns and modern appliances, and somewhere along the way, I became background noise. My calls going to voicemail, my invitations politely declined. Visits grew rarer, each one shorter, leaving me waving from the porch longer than we'd talked. Birthdays were texts instead of calls, quick "Happy birthday, Mom" messages that felt obligatory. Christmases were spent with Brooke's family because "Vivian goes all out, Mom, you know how she is," he'd say, and I'd murmur understanding, swallowing the ache as I decorated a small tree alone, its lights twinkling in empty rooms. I understood, or told myself I did. Children build their own lives. That's natural. But natural doesn't mean being made to feel invisible, like a shadow in your own story. I saw the difference in how he treated Vivian. Sunday dinners at her house every week without fail, the warm glow of her windows visible in photos he posted. Gifts on her birthday, expensive ones, wrapped perfectly. Photos on social media of him helping her in her garden, sleeves rolled up, laughing in the sunshine. Things he hadn't done for me in years. Fixing a loose gate, planting flowers, just being present. Once, I asked him to help replace a leaky faucet, the drip echoing annoyingly in the quiet nights. "Mom, I'm swamped this week, I'll get to it." 3 months later, it was still dripping, a constant reminder. I paid a handyman $180 to fix it, the sound of his tools a brief intrusion. When I mentioned it to Patrick over a rare call, he said, "Good call, Mom, glad it's handled." His tone relieved, no remorse. No apology, no offer to reimburse, just relief that he didn't have to deal with it. I hung up, feeling smaller, the phone heavy in my hand. The small hurts accumulated like dust in corners you forget to clean, layering over time until the room, my heart, felt dimmer. Forgotten anniversaries of Richard's passing, when I'd sit alone with his photo, tears silent. Plans canceled last minute because something came up, leaving food cooling on the table. Me cooking his favorite meals, pot roast, slow simmering with herbs, and waiting with the table set, candles flickering hopefully, only to eat alone when he didn't show, blowing them out one by one. I understood, or told myself I did. Children build their own lives. That's natural. But natural doesn't mean being made to feel invisible, like a shadow in your own story. I saw the difference in how he treated Vivian. Sunday dinners at her house every week without fail, the warm glow of her windows visible in photos he posted. Gifts on her birthday, expensive ones, wrapped perfectly. Photos on social media of him helping her in her garden, sleeves rolled up, laughing in the sunshine. Things he hadn't done for me in years, fixing a loose gate, planting flowers, just being present. Once, I asked him to help replace a leaky faucet, the drip echoing annoyingly in the quiet nights. "Mom, I'm swamped this week, I'll get to it." 3 months later, it was still dripping, a constant reminder. I paid a handyman $180 to fix it, the sound of his tools a brief intrusion. When I mentioned it to Patrick over a rare call, he said, "Good call, Mom, glad it's handled." His tone relieved, no remorse. No apology, no offer to reimburse, just relief that he didn't have to deal with it. I hung up, feeling smaller, the phone heavy in my hand. The small hurts accumulated like dust in corners you forget to clean, layering over time until the room, my heart, felt dimmer. Forgotten anniversaries of Richard's passing, when I'd sit alone with his photo, tears silent. Plans canceled last minute because something came up, leaving food cooling on the table.
Me cooking his favorite meals, pot roast, slow simmering with herbs, and waiting with the table set, candles flickering hopefully, only to eat alone when he didn't show, blowing them out one by one. I understood, or told myself I did. Children build their own lives. That's natural. But natural doesn't mean being made to feel invisible, like a shadow in your own story. I saw the difference in how he treated Vivian. Sunday dinners at her house every week without fail, the warm glow of her windows visible in photos he posted. Gifts on her birthday, expensive ones, wrapped perfectly. Photos on social media of him helping her in her garden, sleeves rolled up, laughing in the sunshine. Things he hadn't done for me in years. Fixing a loose gate, planting flowers, just being present. Once, I asked him to help replace a leaky faucet, the drip echoing annoyingly in the quiet nights. "Mom, I'm swamped this week. I'll get to it." 3 months later, it was still dripping, a constant reminder. I paid a handyman $180 to fix it, the sound of his tools a brief intrusion. When I mentioned it to Patrick over a rare call, he said, "Good call, Mom. Glad it's handled." His tone relieved, no remorse. No apology, no offer to reimburse, just relief that he didn't have to deal with it. I hung up, feeling smaller, the phone heavy in my hand. The small hurts accumulated like dust in corners you forget to clean, layering over time until the room, my heart, felt dimmer. Forgotten anniversaries of Richard's passing, when I'd sit alone with his photo, tears silent. Plans canceled last minute because something came up, leaving food cooling on the table. Me cooking his favorite meals, pot roast, slow simmering with herbs, and waiting with the table set, candles flickering hopefully, only to eat alone when he didn't show, blowing them out one by one. I understood, or told myself I did. Children build their own lives. That's natural. But natural doesn't mean being made to feel invisible, like a shadow in your own story. I saw the difference in how he treated Vivian. Sunday dinners at her house every week without fail, the warm glow of her windows visible in photos he posted. Gifts on her birthday, expensive ones, wrapped perfectly. Photos on social media of him helping her in her garden, sleeves rolled up, laughing in the sunshine. Things he hadn't done for me in years, fixing a loose gate, planting flowers, just being present.
The next day, I went shopping. The first time in years I'd bought something purely for joy. The mall air-conditioned and bustling, scents of pretzels and perfumes mixing. I tried on half a dozen dresses, twirling in the fitting room mirror, feeling silly and young. Settling on the emerald one, it hugged gently, made my eyes look brighter, the color reminding me of hope renewed. I bought new shoes, a small purse, even treated myself to a salon appointment, the stylist's hands gentle in my hair. I told my neighbor, Joan, about it as we watered plants over the fence, the earth smelling rich and damp. We'd become friends over backyard fences, both widows, both with distant children, sharing quiet cups of tea on porches. "Joan, Patrick is taking me to La Perla for Mother's Day, just the two of us." Her eyes lit up, watering can pausing. "Oh, Patricia, that's marvelous. About time that boy remembered what matters." Her words echoed my own secret thoughts, validating the hope I'd guarded so carefully. I spent the days leading up to Sunday floating, a lightness in my steps. I cleaned the house top to bottom, though no one but me would see it, the lemon scent lingering pleasantly. I practiced hairstyles in the mirror, fingers trembling with excitement. I even bought new perfume, spritzing it lightly, the floral notes making me smile. Sunday morning, I woke early, too excited to sleep, birdsong filtering through the window. I took a long bath, steam filling the room, lotioned every inch of skin until it felt soft, renewed. Did my hair in soft waves, strands falling just right. The emerald dress fit perfectly, sliding over my skin like encouragement. The gold locket rested against my collarbone, warm from my body. I looked at myself and thought, I look like a woman who is loved. For a moment, I let myself believe it fully, tears pricking at the corners of my eyes. At 3:45, I was downstairs waiting, the clock's tick amplified in the quiet. At 4:25, the car arrived, gravel crunching under tires. I opened the door with my heart full, the evening air carrying hints of blooming jasmine from the yard. And then Vivian swept in, wearing thousands of dollars of finery, claiming my son, my dinner, my day. Patrick's words, "Mom, you didn't really think this was for you, did you?" echoed in my head as they drove away, the sound fading into the growing dusk. I closed the door and finally let the tears come, hot and silent at first, then building into waves that shook my shoulders. Joan found me an hour later when she came over with a small plant as a Mother's Day gift, its leaves fresh and green. She took one look at my face, puffy eyes, smudged makeup, and pulled me into a hug, her arms strong and steady. "What happened, honey?" I told her everything between sobs, words tumbling out in the dimming living room light. She listened without interrupting, just held me as I cried out years of stored pain, the weight lifting slightly with each tear. When I finished, voice hoarse, she said quietly, wiping my cheek with her thumb, "Patricia, you don't deserve this, not one bit." I knew she was right. Something inside me shifted that night, not broken, but awakened, a quiet resolve forming amid the hurt. The next morning, I didn't make coffee for one out of habit. I made it because I wanted it, savoring the first sip as steam curled up. I sat at the table and made decisions, the wood warm under my arms from the morning sun. First, the finances. Patrick had access to a joint savings account we'd opened after Richard died. For emergencies, we'd said, a safety net. Over the years, it had become Patrick's emergency fund. He withdrew money whenever he needed, never large amounts at once, but steady, chipping away. I logged in, the screen's glow harsh in the quiet kitchen, and reviewed the last year's transactions. $800 here for car repairs, $1,200 there unmarked, $600, $2,000, totaling just over $18,000. My money. My pension supplements, money I'd scrimped to save, skipping small pleasures. I called the bank at 9 a.m., voice steady. "I need to close a joint account and remove my son as an authorized user on my credit card." The representative was professional, tone neutral. "We'll need you to come in to sign paperwork, Mrs. Harlan. I'll be there in an hour." I dressed simply, jeans, blouse, comfortable shoes, the cotton soft against my skin, no more dressing up for disappointments. At the bank, cool air-conditioned, papers rustling, I signed everything needed. The joint account was closed, funds transferred to my sole account with a satisfying confirmation beep. Patrick's supplemental card was canceled effective immediately. I changed all passwords, set up transaction alerts, each click a small act of reclamation. When I left, stepping into the bright morning, I felt lighter. My money was mine again, a tangible weight lifted. Back home, I tackled the garage, the door creaking open to reveal dust motes dancing in the light. Over the years, Patrick had stored dozens of boxes there, temporarily, he always said, but years passed. Old college books yellowing, seasonal decorations gathering cobwebs, furniture from his first apartment, things he didn't want but couldn't part with. I dragged them out one by one into the driveway, muscles aching in a good way, sweat beading despite the shade, cardboard scraped against concrete, labels fading. If he wanted them, he could come get them. If not, I'd donate or discard, freeing the space. Joan watched from her yard, hose in hand. "Need help?" "No, thank you. This is something I need to do myself." She nodded understandingly and kept me company from afar, her presence a quiet support. By evening, the garage was empty, swept clean, the concrete cool and open. Space, just like I was making in my life. breathing room I hadn't known I craved. The fallout came quickly. Tuesday night, my phone exploded with calls, screen lighting the dark bedroom. Patrick. I let them go to voicemail, heart steady. Wednesday morning, texts. Mom, my card was declined at dinner last night. What's going on? The words stark on the screen. I didn't reply, setting the phone face down. Wednesday evening, the calls became frantic, ring after ring. Finally, I answered, voice calm. Mom? Thank God. My cards are all dead. The joint account is gone. The bank said you closed everything. Why? Because it's my money, Patrick, and I decided I no longer want you to have access. Silence. Then panic, his breath audible. Mom, I need $18,000 tonight. There's a payment due on an investment. If I don't make it, I lose everything I've put in already, over $35,000. Exactly the amount he'd withdrawn from my account over time, plus interest. Poetic, almost. What investment? It's a real estate partnership. Great returns projected, but there's a shortfall, and if I don't cover my share tonight... His voice cracked, raw fear threading through. For the first time, he sounded truly scared, vulnerable in a way that tugged at old instincts. And you thought I'd just transfer $18,000 to rescue you? You always have before, Mom. Please. I'll pay you back, I swear. I thought of Sunday, of standing in my emerald dress, the fabric now hanging untouched in the closet, while he escorted Vivian. The memory sharp, painful. Do you remember Mother's Day, Patrick? A pause, heavy. Mom, this isn't about that. It is exactly about that. You chose to make Vivian feel special on my day. You let me believe the dinner was for me, let me prepare, let me hope, and then you acted like my disappointment was unreasonable. I didn't mean to hurt you. Vivian really wanted... Vivian is not your mother. I am. Another silence, longer, the line crackling faintly. Mom, please, I'm begging. This will ruin me. No, Patrick. What? No, I'm not giving you the money. He exploded, voice rising. How can you do this? I'm your son. Yes, and sons should treat their mothers with respect, not just call when they need bailing out. You're punishing me for one dinner? I'm not punishing you, I'm protecting myself. I've spent years being available whenever you needed something, forgiving every cancellation, every forgotten occasion. No more. You'll regret this when I'm in real trouble. I already was in real trouble, feeling invisible in my own child's life. He tried every angle, guilt sharp as knives, anger hot, promises desperate. I held firm, voice steady even as my hand gripped the phone tighter. Finally, fine, I don't need your help anyway. I'll figure it out. He hung up, the abrupt silence ringing. Messages came from Brooke next, pleading, explaining, promising payment plans in careful paragraphs. I didn't respond, deleting them one by one. I turned off my phone and slept peacefully for the first time in years, the sheets cool and welcoming. Thursday morning, Patrick showed up at my door, gravel crunching again. He looked exhausted, dark circles deep, rumpled clothes, smelling faintly of stress. Mom, please let me in. We need to talk. I let him in but kept distance, arms crossed lightly. He paced my living room, footsteps muffled on the rug. The investment fell through. It was a scam. I lost everything I put in. Brooke is furious. I used money we'd saved for renovations. We're fighting. I might lose everything. I'm sorry you're going through this. Are you? Because you could have prevented it. No, you made choices. You withdrew money from my account repeatedly without asking. You invested money you couldn't afford to lose. Those were your decisions. He stopped pacing, face crumpling, hands raking through his hair. I know I've been a terrible son. I see that now. I took you for granted. I let Vivian. I let her become the mother figure because it was easier. She demanded attention, and you never did. The honesty surprised me, raw and unfiltered, hanging in the sunlit room. I was wrong, horribly wrong. That day, seeing you in your dress, knowing I'd misled you, it hit me what I'd done, but I was too cowardly to fix it then. Tears in his eyes now, glistening. I don't expect forgiveness today. I just needed you to know I understand the pain I caused, and I'm going to change, not for money, but because I want to be better. He pulled an envelope from his pocket, paper crinkling. This isn't a check, it's a letter. I opened it later after he'd left quietly, sitting in the same chair with afternoon light warming my lap. Pages of handwritten apology, specific, painful, ink slightly smudged in places. Every forgotten birthday listed with dates, every canceled plan recalled, every time he'd chosen convenience over me, acknowledged without excuse. And at the end, a commitment. Weekly calls on Wednesdays at 7 p.m., monthly dinners alternating homes, help around my house without asking, mowing the lawn, changing light bulbs, real effort, scheduled, tangible. It wasn't immediate reconciliation. Trust takes time, mending slowly like a wound. But slowly, things shifted, tentative at first. Patrick started calling, not to ask for anything, just to talk, asking about my day, listening to stories of Richard with genuine interest. He came over to fix things he'd ignored for years, the fence leaning slightly, gutters clogged with leaves, the porch step that creaked underfoot, tools clinking, his hands dirtied. We had awkward dinners at first, conversations stilted over plates, silences filled with clinking silverware. But gradually they became easier, laughter creeping in. He asked about my life, really listened, eyes meeting mine. He joined Joan and me for coffee sometimes on the porch, heard stories about his father he'd never bothered to ask for before, nodding thoughtfully. Brooke apologized too one afternoon over tea, voice soft, admitting she'd encouraged the Vivian focus because it kept peace in their home. She started inviting me over separately, cooking meals with care, treating me with new respect that felt earned. I never gave him the $18,000. He worked extra jobs, negotiated with creditors under fluorescent office lights, learned hard lessons about money and responsibility, emerging wiser, humbled. I took the space I'd reclaimed and filled it with life, joined a book club, pages turning under library lamps with new friends, started volunteering at the local animal shelter, soft fur and grateful eyes healing quiet corners of my heart. Took watercolor classes, brushes dipping in vibrant colors, something I'd always wanted but never had time for while waiting for phone calls that rarely came, the studio smelling of paint and possibility. A year later, on Mother's Day, Patrick arrived early with flowers, roses in soft pinks, and a small box wrapped carefully. "Open it." Inside was my gold locket, but now with a new photo, the two of us from a recent lunch, both smiling genuinely under dappled sunlight. "And this," he said, holding up a printed reservation, paper crisp, "La Perla tonight, just you and me, no one else." We went, sat at a window table watching the sunset over the water, colors bleeding into the waves, talked for hours, not about problems or needs, but about memories warm as candlelight, dreams shared quietly, ordinary things that felt extraordinary. For the first time in years, I felt truly seen, the salt breeze carrying laughter between us. I still wear the emerald dress sometimes, fabric soft from wear. It no longer reminds me of betrayal, but of the day I chose myself, standing taller in its reflection. Because that's the real story. A mother who stopped waiting for crumbs and built her own table. And found that when she did, her son finally learned to sit at it properly. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, if you've carried pain quietly for years, know this: you deserve to be seen. You deserve respect. And sometimes setting boundaries isn't losing love, it's making space for the real thing. If my journey touched you, if you have your own story of finding strength, please share it in the comments below. You're not alone, and if you want to hear more stories of women reclaiming their worth, subscribe to the channel. We're in this together.